Welcome, and thank you for joining the Utilizing EMRS and Phone Bank staff for initial data collection during an animal emergency. You may ask a written question at any time by selecting All Panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your message in the box provided, and hit Enter to send. With that, I'll turn the call over to Liz Fernandez. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Fernandez with the Professional Development Services branch, and I'd also like to welcome you to today's webinar. We have three presenters on our webinar today. Dana Ladner has been with the Kansas Department of Agriculture since October 2014. In her role as Compliance Education Coordinator, she assists the agency with education and outreach opportunities, internal and external to the agency. Having been involved with 5 fully functional state-level exercises and 2 tabletop exercises in Kansas, Dana serves as Phone Bank Coordinator and is part of the Joint Information Center. KDA, in close consultation with their USDA APHIS Veterinary Services National Preparedness and Incident Coordinator, the EMRS staff specialists, have worked closely over the years to develop a database system meeting the needs of Kansas agriculture during an animal emergency, allowing phone bank members to secure much-needed information from the public. Our next speaker is Dr. Brian Archer. Dr. Archer received a Bachelor of Science degree in Agriculture from Kansas State University in 1997 and a DVM degree from Kansas State in 1999. He has worked for USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, Veterinary Services since 1997. He's worked as a field veterinary medical officer in South Dakota, a supervisory veterinary medical officer in Topeka, Kansas, and transitioned back to the field as a field veterinary medical officer in Kansas, located in McPherson. Nationally, Dr. Archer has been extensively involved in a number of animal disease emergencies, including serving as a member of one of USDA's 5 national incident management teams. Currently, Dr. Archer is an EMRS staff specialist with USDA APHIS VS National Preparedness and Incident Coordination. And Kathy Thompson will also be on, and she is a program consultant with the Division of Conservation at the Kansas Department of Agriculture. She has been with DOC since 1998. Kathy has been an active phone bank volunteer for the Department of Agriculture for 5 years and currently serves as the co-coordinator. Kathy's frontline knowledge is very valuable in her role as co-coordinator. And with that, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Dana.
Good morning. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate everybody this morning taking time to join us. And for those of you that might have been on a webinar on April 14th, we talked about the phone bank at that time, and this is kind of an extension of that because the presentation at that time kind of took a detour with COVID, and the Department of Agriculture actually activated our phone bank at that time. So we really wanted to follow this up with some great information on our EMRS. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. The Department of Agriculture for the state of Kansas has really been trying to make sure that we utilize our phone bank to the best of our capabilities to help in the case of an animal emergency. We've got a great staff that's confident on our phone bank, and we really want to make sure that we can help the agency. But with that came some challenges. The current phone bank team has about 20 personnel. Some are located in our headquarters building, which would be incident command post during an event, and some of them are remotely throughout the state. So we needed to make sure accommodate folks no matter where they were located. We needed to make sure that the information that we gathered was effectively communicated to the incident command team on anything that came in through the phone bank. We needed to make sure that we captured animal inventory information along with identifying information with addresses, et cetera, make sure that we had the best information available. In addition to that, we had to make sure that we had an opportunity to collect any other information that callers may want to contribute when they give us a call. And a system that we use must be easy to use and allow for just-in-time training. And with that, like I say, the phone bank team is very knowledgeable, and we want to make sure that we were able to contribute to the best of our abilities during an animal event in Kansas. And with that, our emergency management team worked with the EMRS team, and we reached out to find out if we could tweak some things within the EMRS system to maybe solve some of the challenges that we had in Kansas to utilize our phone bank. EMRS is authorized only, and so our entire team has EMRS authorization with that. Our team also has Microsoft platform to utilize that on. So some changes were made in consultation with the management team at the Department of Agriculture and our EMRS staff, and we were ready to test it in December of 28 during one of our functional exercises. We started out by making sure that the initial contact report was easy to get to, easy to look at, and it contained a dialogue wizard to be able to walk phone bank staff through the steps, very similar to what online shopping may be or other needs that we're working online. So it's a familiar look as phone bank personnel are walking through the steps with that. There are simple questions asked for information to be gathered. It's quick. It's easily captured by our phone bank team to make sure that the information is captured accurately with it. And the best thing about it, as it automatically captures the information from this initial call, that then goes on to be able to go through other sections of the team as needs arise. And another great thing is the mapping piece of it, to be able to put that address in and have information go directly through that EMRS map package for our incident. The initial contact report is vital with the pertinent information that's necessary. The phone bank works directly with the caller to obtain their name, address, phone number, put that information into the report, the number and type or the species of animals that are on the premises, and this is all put in real time. And so once a report is closed, then it goes to other options. But we really start out with making sure that we have that information necessary for the entire team. And so during an animal emergency, we would ask if the clinical signs are consistent with the disease, yes or no, one of those major first questions to get things going. And if it's yes, once the call is complete, that information immediately goes to our operations center, and that section goes ahead and continues with their piece of what needs to go on during an event and whether an FAD needs to be dispatched for an investigation or not. The best thing about this, again, it's real time, so there are no emails, no phone calls, no other forms of communications necessary. Once the phone bank person has ended that call, that information immediately goes to operations, and so it's really expedited on what we're able to do during an event. As far as information, again, it is immediate, and whether it is just information or a sick call or if a permit is needed to move animals or commodities during a stop movement order, we're able to get that information to our permit section, again, utilizing the same initial information from our callers to go forward. Again, no follow-up is needed with that. And the other section that we have was added after the 2018 event, well, not the event, but the exercise, to make sure that we had a place to put anything that we needed to know for the entire team, whether it was wild movement, those were in violation, if there was possible criminal activity involved, if there was possible rumors of riots or picketing, things like that. This was a place to put other information so the entire team had it and it was easily viewed by those on the team. In 2018, we worked with the EMRS as it was adapted for the state of Kansas, and the main objective was to really utilize this and have the phone bank team work through it and collect that information the best that we can to make sure that we could work through the system for everybody to learn how to use it We took close to 200 calls during the exercise over a couple of days, and our team on the phone bank really did a great job on getting the information, working through it effectively, getting the information, getting it in there in a great uniform manner with it. And once the team became familiar with the system and got through it, it did not slow down any of the information that we were presenting to the rest of the group. As with anything new, you kind of are leery about things with it, and so the first time the phone bank team took a call with a sick animal that needed to be reported to go up to the operations center, the phone bank staff alerted me as coordinator, and I'm the person in the example that once that call came in, I didn't know if everything was working the right way, so I literally bound up a couple flights of stairs to make sure that things were operating the way that they were. And sure enough, by the time I got to the third floor, everything was in motion, excuse me, and I was really relieved to know that it worked. So that little bit that first time, but everything worked really well. Everything worked with our permitting section as well when we collected the information, and they were able to accept or reject requests for permitting, again, with that initial information that the phone bank acquired for them. Operations was utilizing it for control as well, for controllers. And from our after-action reports and hot wash comments, everything worked well, and changes were made for future use with that. 2019, we had another functional exercise, and we were able to do a refresher on the course. Brian Archer provided a webinar for the team to get back up to speed after being away from it for a year. And again, the after-action hot wash comments received were very positive. We have adapted the EMRS information as a proof of concept that it is flexible. And the information that you will see in the dialog boxes that Brian will go over are unique to Kansas, and it's not in production for other states at this time. And so we're really excited to be able to test it and train it during our functional exercises for the Department of Agriculture with our state. And if it's something that works and continues on, the EMRS team would need to be reached out to officially to see how it may be able to be utilized for other states. Again, this is very Kansas-specific to the needs of an animal emergency that we utilize during our functional exercises. We're going to go through some quick dialogue boxes for what it actually looks like when we start our initial contact report. The screen comes up when the phone bank personnel takes that call, and we start off with a census report or a permit request. And for this presentation right now, we're just going to go through with the census report, and it looks very much like a lot of things we see for online and clicking through things. The source of the first contact was a phone bank call with it, and we enter the person's name and phone number who is calling in. For the most part, people are really good on the exercise anyway about giving us their name, but they have also given us information that they didn't want to report a name. So with that, we put in unknown. We have callers the premise name and the address, city, state, zip with that. And the premise name usually is a unique name. As we know in agriculture, some people have a home place, have a West Farm, have the Smith Farm, et cetera. And so this enables for follow-up to be able to quickly utilize terminology that a producer or those calling in would utilize on that specific property. So we have the name, address, city, state, zip code, and then what type of production operation they have. And there is drop-down menus with that, and so it's fairly easy with little dialogue between the phone bank person and the caller to get this information. And the best thing about it is if you put in a valid address, then it will immediately come up with the coordinates for that property. And that helps throughout the entire exercise or an actual event to have a pinpoint where those locations are. And if an address is not in the system or valid, we utilize Bing Maps at the agency for our phone bank team to go ahead and find those coordinates. The next part, when the next screen that comes up, asks about the species group that's on the premise. The Department of Agriculture phone bank, not all of the volunteers or staff are from an agriculture background or have taken Animal Science 101. So a good cheat sheet for species with common names is really great to have with it because the scientific names and common terminologies don't always match up. So that's something that we have learned. That's a good thing to have. And then the phone bank staff can put in the species, the number of head, et cetera, with that. And so it really comes in handy for smaller, maybe a hobby farm, which is this example, or, you know, if it's just a general feedlot location or a backgrounding operation, you can put that information in. Phone bank personnel can enter into 5 species, but if there aren't 5, individuals taking the calls can leave that blank and then just go ahead to the next screen. So if a caller calls into the phone bank, gives the information, and states that the animals are showing clinical signs consistent with the disease of concern, phone bank staff will put in yes and then put in a description of the signs. Again, this is not utilizing scientific and medical terminology. This is coming straight from a caller to the phone bank personnel in common layman's terms. And so the best thing about this is we can keep following through to the operations section, et cetera, to get that information to where it needs to be. The phone bank staff have now taken all the information that's required from this initial contact. The caller is happy because they have reached a person, have been able to give the information that has been asked of them to provide. And so we've got a new record, and we're ready to finish up on the call. It's been routed to the operations center for their review, and so we continue on. They've closed out that record. The phone bank staff now wait for their next call with it, and whether they hit a census report or a permit request, it continues on, and they are starting another call. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brian Archer, and he's going to go through what happens on the next step.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Dana. And so, yeah, what I'm going to talk about now is Dana just went through the dialogues of how the phone bank takes that information while they're on the phone in real time and enters it in those dialog boxes. So now it's in EMRS, and it's in EMRS on a form called the initial contact report, as she mentioned. So now that it's in there, what happens? Well, the neat thing is, and I'm going to back up here just 2 slides. When you see this screen, when the phone bank saw this screen right here that says a new ICR for census has been created, automatically in the ops section they have some views built to where they can see the information that was just gathered. And like Dana mentioned, there doesn't have to be any phone calls, no sticky notes, no nothing. It's just boom, it's in a view form. And I'm going to kind of show you that as we go through here just a little bit. Okay, so basically the census and that initial contact information is automatically displayed on a map package. In EMRS we have what's called an advanced map, where we can build maps for different sections within an IMT. You can have an overall map. You can have a map just for operations. We can have several maps just for operations, and you'll see that here in a second. During the last Kansas exercise, last December, I'm sorry, it might have been the one before, but they also exercised the permitting unit. So we built a map package specifically for the permitting unit, and they could see those phone bank reports coming in by permit request and where they were located directly on the map, so that way they get an idea as to where these requests were coming from in relation to known control areas and that kind of thing. Permit requests are automatically displayed on that map package, like I already mentioned. But the other thing that's kind of neat is that census and sick call reports are also automatically displayed. So you can select an area of the map, and I'm going to show you that here in just a minute, and just see within a couple clicks how many animals have already been reported to be in that area and that kind of thing. So we'll go on to the next slide. Here's an example of that map package for the Fortify incident that the KDA hosted. And you can see that on this particular map, the layer I put in there for these ICRs coming from the phone bank is if you see a navy square, that represents an initial contact report that came in. And in addition to that, if you see an aqua star on top of or near a navy square, those represent census reports. So if you see just the navy square by itself, that means a call came in and those people had a question of some kind and they reported something that may have been one of those other classifications where they were reporting illegal movement or just had a question or whatever. We can map those. In addition, if those same people reported they had animals and the census was completed, those show up then as those aqua stars. What's really neat about this map package, and I've got what I did in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see that same set of circles where we have the infected zone and the buffer zone. The infected zone is red, the buffer zone is blue, and then bigger than that we have a green surveillance zone. Is once you have these layers added to the map, and keep in mind that they're added automatically, so as soon as you saw that previous screen that said a new ICR was completed, a new navy square and or aqua star would pop up onto that map automatically. You can go into that map and you can select what's inside. So I can select what's inside the infected zone, or I can select what's inside the buffer zone. And in addition to that, I can manually, using my mouse, click and hold and drag and create a box and select an area of my choosing within that map. When you do that, a window pops open directly on the map that you see here on the screen. And so, for example, where the red arrow is pointing at the top, I'm pointing to the census layer. So I've clicked on census. And you can see that within the area that I've selected, there are 33 census records that have been collected. You can look down that view and see the species. You can see the number of species on each one of those premises. And if you were to scroll on across, which I don't include here, you can also see the premises and prem name, all that information. What's really neat about this tool then is if you look at the bottom where the other red arrow is, you see a tab that says Export tab to a CSV. So what that basically means is you can export this information out to Excel, and then you can use it if you're preparing, let's say, for example, a vaccine request or whatever it may be. You can have a little bit of justification, a little background to your request to show that you've done some work to identify the number of susceptible species that are or are not in your area. And as you look through here, for example, on the species list, you'll see that there's cattle, there's goats, there's sheep. There's also a couple dogs. So as Dana mentioned, the people on the call are not necessarily always animal science majors, and so they're just collecting what people tell them. If we're doing a vaccine request for FMD or something like that, obviously we don't need to include those dogs. So when you export that tab to CSV or to Excel, you can filter out and do all the neat tools and whiz-bangs you can with Excel. The other neat thing about the map package that I'll just go ahead and mention while we're on this screen is that if you look across the top and you see census, where there were 33 census records collected in the area I happen to select off the map, you can also see that there's other tabs. And so basically in this map package, we can pull any information in the EMRS into that map package and add it as a layer. So if you want to see the number of positive friends within the area, number of feedlots, number of dairies, number of poultry operations, whatever it may be, we can add that as a layer of the map, and you can quickly, within literally a couple clicks, see exactly what is identified within that section. But again, getting back to this topic here, as these phone bank reports are completed, literally as they hang up the phone, the information automatically pops in the EMRS in this map package so you can utilize it for management. In addition to looking at it on a broad spectrum, you can scroll in on the map into an individual premises, which is exactly what I've done here. So you can see this individual prim. It's got the navy square with the aqua star superimposed over it. That tells us that somebody from this premises called into the phone bank and they reported census information. I can click directly on those icons, and that same type of window you saw before pops up on the map, showing me one right where the red arrow was pointing. I've clicked on the census layer, and I can see that these people called to report that they have sheep, and there's 50 head of sheep at this premises. In addition to that, I could click on the additional tab. You can see underneath my red arrow just a little bit, it mentions phone bank contact reports. Well, in this screen here, you note that I clicked on that other tab. So now I'm looking at the ICR record that the phone bank collected. You notice that there is an ICR hot link where it says ICR:1100:20. Okay, that's the number that the system automatically generated to account for this phone bank call that was recorded. If you click on that hot link, the record pops up, and you can see in detail the actual information that the phone bank personnel collected when they visited with that individual who called in. So if for whatever reason we need to reach back out to those people, we can do so. We've got their right here, and we can call them back. But what other is of interest to note is that, let's say, for example, that all these people called in and they reported their animals, or a census was done, or however it was occurred. It could have been door to door. So it doesn't necessarily have to be call-in. We have other avenues to capture that surveillance information. But once it's in there, let's say a new positive pops up in a state, and now we've got new individuals we know of in a control area. You can use EMRS to quickly pull this data, create a mail merge to send them out some type of notice, whether that be a quarantine notification or just a simple biosecurity notification, whatever it may be, to quickly reach back out to these people that you know are in an affected area. We mentioned a couple times before, Dana did, that the dialogue walks them through the process of if there is a sick call to select yes or no. And when they do that, they select yes, they have the opportunity to put in a few lines as to what the caller is reporting. Well, if I'm working in the operations section, I do not want to have to filter through 200 plus phone calls is what occurred on that particular exercise, trying to find those that are sick calls. So what we have in the ops section is what's called a view. And if you look at this screen I'm showing you here, it says Fortify ICR reports with clinical signs. Basically, the surveillance unit in the ops section has this view up on their computer, and they refresh it, periodically, every few minutes. And as they refresh this view, any information that's collected by the phone bank automatically shows up here. Okay. You'll also notice that if you look at the top of the view, there are several columns. And if you look at the 5th column over, there's one that says clinical signs. Every single one of those are yes. So this view is specific for only those ICR reports that come into the phone bank where the producer or the owner says that, yes, I have some type of clinical sign. So the ops chief is sitting here watching this, or his or her designee, and as they get one coming in, they're going to go ahead and open it to view what the situation is, what the caller reported. So in this particular example where that red arrow is clicking, the ops chief or his or her designee is going to click on that ICR number to look at this first report that says 2 pigs, severe lameness, and are down. When they click on that link, the actual record opens. So now they can review what the phone bank collected. They can have the phone number to call that individual back, and then they can take action as appropriate. And so the way it was handled and managed in the Kansas incident was that if the ops chief or his or her designee decided that they needed to send an FADD out to it, they'd go ahead and open up the investigation directly from this form and create a pending exam and assign it to somebody. Once they assign it to somebody, the ops chief would either have that person call the producer back, or the ops chief, him or herself, would call him back and let him know an FADD was being dispatched. Any action that was taken was recorded under the notes. And you can see down there under the notes section, contacted the caller and determined investigation is warranted and FADD is dispatched. And I have that red arrow up there to indicate that that person then created an exam, so that way they can be watching for that exam to be completed, know when it's done after the FADD gets there to review the results. It is also used to monitor several different types of calls. So, for example, I've gone back to that same view, Fortify ICR reports with clinical signs, and you can see the second one was clicked on, and the record was opened up. Well, this is a deal where a call came into the phone bank where there were a lot of dying cattle at this particular premises, and the caller hung up. And so when the ops chief and the surveillance unit started taking a look at this information, determining what they were going to do about it, when they reviewed the address, it was determined that this address actually went to a FSIS slaughter facility. So the call was most likely a hoax. And so what they did is they indicated up there in the clinical diagnosis, the ops chief put the word hoax ahead of the same information that the phone bank collected. So that way when they're looking back at their view, they can then see that that one's been addressed. And we have some other avenues for the ops chief to also recognize which ones have been addressed and which ones haven't. But the whole reason I threw this slide in here is to show you that the phone bank records their data, the ops section has access to that same information, and then they can adjust and alter the information as necessary based on the work done with it. We've talked a little bit about the operations section for SIT calls. The permitting unit had their own custom view, and so if you look across the top now, it says 4 to 5 pending permit requests in that viewfinder. So all this is a different view within the system, and this is a view that the permitting section looked at specifically. We didn't go over it in Dana's discussion and Dana's talk, but if you notice, there were 3 options that the phone bank could select from. One was a census, one was a permitting, and the other was other, just a catch-all type deal. If the phone bank went through the permitting option, they had different dialog boxes, obviously, to complete. And it asked questions such as the commodity that was being moved, number of movements that were going to occur, number of head per movements, the dates that the caller wanted to have these movements occur with a start and end date, that type of thing. When they went through those dialogues, as soon as they finished that dialog box, what was called a permit request would show up in this view that you're seeing here for the permitting unit. So all the permitting unit had to do is monitor this view, and as these requests came into the phone bank, they'd start to pop into this view right here. They would select one by clicking where the red arrow is, right on the hot link, and then you see the record below that popped up, where they could actually review what the caller was requesting, what type of commodity was moving. They have the coordinates and or the address. They could look at where that was located basically on their advanced map package within relation to other control areas and make a determination as to whether or not to accept or reject this request, and then they'd have the information to call back to the producer if they had additional questions. As mentioned, we also had a other category just for those oddballs that came in, people wanting to report illegal movements or people just having questions or whatever it may be. And so that third category was added for this last exercise. And so there was a person in the ops section that would just monitor these other type of reports that came in. And again, this is a different custom view than the one specific for SIT calls. We're able to divide it out. And the thing that's kind of neat about this is we can add other categories as necessary. So let's say, for example, that calls were coming into the phone bank that really needed to be forwarded on to the public information team. Okay, we could create a separate section just for the PIT if you would like to have that. And then those would be designated to the PIT team, and they could have their own custom view to view those and take action on as appropriate. With that being said, one thing I want to mention, and Dana kind of already touched on it, but all these dialogues and all this phone bank information that was generated was specifically for the state of Kansas. So if you do go take a look for this in the training environment in EMRS today, you will not find it. But what we want to kind of stress is show a little bit the flexibility of the system and how it can be used for things like a phone bank as well as other avenues. If other states are wanting to use something similar to this, we could make it available for other states as well. The thing is, what we cannot get into is creating a set of questions for 50 states, and where every state is asking something different. But we could certainly generate something that is standardized and ask the common questions coming into a phone bank and those types of things, and then during an incident, open that up for all states to be able to use. So that's kind of where we're going with it. We've pretty much done the proof of concept, and it's worked very well, and I think Kansas is planning to continue to use it in the future. And it's been great to work with them as they've gone through this piece. So with that, I'm done, Liz, if we want to open it up to any questions.
Sure. We do have a question that came through the chat box, and it says, does EMRS automatically generate an email to notify the appropriate people when an ICR report with clinical signs has been logged?
The answer to that question is, during this exercise, no. Because we didn't set it up that way, but the answer is yes, we can set it up to where there can be an automatic notification go through via email to let you know that there's been a report come in. The reality is we create that within about 2 hours into an incident. Most people want that shut off because you're getting email after email after email after email. It's just an auto-generated email saying that something's come into your inbox. It's far easier just to monitor the view and have that view as they come in, they pop open, they immediately just show up. You click on it, review it, and you take action. But if it's sporadic, not happening very often, then yes, automatic emails are possible. In fact, we do that with the permitting section now, to where when a permit request comes in, there is an automatic email generated. But again, like I've said, generally most people request that we shut that off pretty quick because it just gets to be too many emails cluttering up your email box. They'd much rather watch the view.
Okay. So, Andre, do you want to give them instructions on how to ask a verbal question?
Yeah, absolutely. Press #2 to ask a verbal question or send it via chat. To ask a question, select all panelists, enter your message, and hit enter to send. You may also ask a verbal question, again, by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. Not currently seeing any questions on the call line.
Okay. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes in case there are questions. And everybody's information is on the screen, too, so if you have questions later, you can always contact the 3 people that are on the line today. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the VSTDP website and USDA APHIS in our video gallery. So if you have people that wanted to join today and couldn't, this will be recorded and will be up there probably within a week of today.
And I guess, Liz, we may want to give Kathy an opportunity. She was one of the primary users on the phone bank of the system. If she has any comments she'd like to add, I should have done that before I offered it up to questions.
Sure.
The only thing I have to add, it's a pretty easy system when you're sitting there taking call after call. It pops up. I mean, you can literally be on and off of a call within 5-10 minutes. Our old system, it took forever to get the calls through, and it is just help. This is a tremendous help. Gets you right where it needs to go, and you're not on the phone as long. You can still do other work. That's all I have.
We do have a question that's coming through the chat box. It says, thanks for the informative presentation introducing a new feature in EMRS. The question is, could we use this feature for managing the animal sick call line during an incident?
Absolutely, and in fact, that's what we just did here in Kansas. Only it wasn't just the sick call line; they have their phone bank that receives all calls. But absolutely, this is kind of exactly what we designed that to be able to handle. And so we would, once we develop some standardized questions, and the Kansas exercises have given us an awesome opportunity to work through what type of questions should be asked. We can certainly just turn that on for other incidents and make this feature available in those other incidents, and so that your sick call personnel, as they receive calls, they walk right through this same dialogue. And then as soon as they're done with the last dialogue or last wizard box, whatever you want to call it, that information's in the section. So the answer to that question is yes. Again, provided we have standardized information. We cannot, if a particular states want to ask different questions, we'd have to vet those through and make it more of a standardized system to where it's available for all states. We can't really do a onesies and twosies thing just because we don't really have the resources to be able to support that. But if we come down to an agreeable set of questions that want to be asked, we put those together, push them out to any state that wants to use that piece of the section. And then, of course, there is some flexibility still within it. So let's say there's additional information you wanted to capture. You can still open up that ICR like I showed you, and I showed you how the ops chief was able to add additional information. If other information you want your phone personnel to collect, they can still open up that ICR and add it later. But again, if we can get a standardized set of questions to where the dialogues just walk you through, boom, 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 what you select, and it's all captured, that makes it quick, that makes it easy for the phone bank personnel. And it's kind of like what happens in Kansas. You don't necessarily have to have animal-specific type people on the phone answering those calls, because the dialogue walks them through it just a little bit, provide that information to somebody who is more animal industry savvy and call back and obtain additional information as necessary. All that to say, the answer to your question is yes, it can be used for sick call phone banks.
We do have another question. It says, can you add follow-up information to the census data, such as update number of animals or observations, et cetera?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when this collection is made, when that phone bank personnel hangs up, that is a collection of information as of the time of that call. It's a snapshot information. If you want to do follow-up information or record what the situation is a week later or 2 weeks later, whatever it may be, then that either requires a call back from that individual back to the phone bank, or what we would do in the Kansas situation is we would pull those ICRs out and we would have the list of phone numbers, list of names, give it to our phone bank personnel and say, why don't you call these people back and see today, make sure they're still not exhibiting any clinical signs. And then the answer to that is yes, we do record that as a secondary contact. So now we can start to put on our map over time, potentially, spread of disease or, not spread of disease as areas stay negative or stay clear or reported no clinical signs over time. Add that to our information coming in from other modalities such as lab reports from the lab and where we know disease is and that type of thing. You can start to get a good epidemiological picture as to what's going on in that particular region or in that particular state over time. So the answer to your question is it's a snapshot in time when that call is taken. You either have to reach back out and do another report or have the public call back in if you do an information push similar to what Kansas does.
Do we have any other questions?
One thing that I wanted to
Go ahead.
This is Dana, and one thing I wanted to add is that we're very blessed in Kansas to have a great team on our phone bank. And as we've mentioned a couple times, that we have non-animal science people on our phone bank. This enables us to take accurate information with that, stick to the script with FAQs, and not venture off. And so we know that our animal staff, animal health staff, those with animal knowledge will be utilized in other positions. And so it is really great to be able to use everybody within an agency or volunteers, et cetera, for your phone bank with it because, again, they stick to the script. They stick to the information that's requested with that, and that's really given us a great opportunity to provide a service to our agency, and in an animal event, we would be ready to go with the staff that we have.
Okay, we don't seem to have any other questions on the phone or in the chat. So we'll just give a couple more minutes. I'll just read my ending. I just want to thank everybody for their participation today. And on behalf of the National Training and Exercise Program, I'd also like to thank Brian, Dana, and Kathy for being on the line with us today. The NTEP will be offering 2 additional webinars in May. We have an upcoming webinar on Thursday, May 14th, which is this week at 11 a.m. on the National Veterinary Stockpile. And our other webinar is on May 21st at 11 a.m. on biosecurity for healthy farms and healthy agriculture. And one thing I always ask at the end of our webinars is that if anyone has any additional ideas for webinars that the VSNTEP can explore for our emergency preparedness community, please feel free to contact us. And you can find recorded webinars on various topics on the TEP video gallery online at USDA APHIS website. And if there's no more questions, I will bid you all to have a great afternoon. Okay, I think that concludes our webinar.